today we have some a kind of a different episode of Nachorror, you could say. Instead of reading one long story, we are reading, yes, Nachorror, good job. We are reading 4 stories. 4 shorter ones, but they total around 5,000 some amount of points. Points? Man, I'm really fucking tired, I'm so sorry. They are around 5,000 words is what I was trying to say, but my head isn't working right now, so that's an unfortunate thing that we all have to deal with. Perfect, there we go. There is a story also. Link to the one that we're going to be reading first, which is the Evolutionary Reason for the Uncanny Valley. The first story is a bit different also, because usually when I read stories in this channel, I've never read those stories before. They're complete strangers to me. But this time I've actually read the Evolutionary Reason for the Uncanny Valley. One time because my friend recommended me to read it, Nemesis recommended this story for me, but also because I wasn't aware of this, but I've actually heard this story before in a different kind of form. You see, the Evolutionary Reason for the Uncanny Valley is an interesting story because it's kind of had that Cannibal Holocaust effect or Blair Witch Project effect, which is that a bunch of people actually think that this story is real, because it's been like this story that's been shared a lot online, and people have written like tweets about it, shit like that, and it's kind of taken a life of its own, and it kind of become a thing that is actually considered to be real. I had no idea that this was the fella who made the story originally, but yeah, I learned that recently. I am very excited to have a bit of a different episode. I hope that I won't be too tired or too parched to get through with this. Now that we're a bit late, it's a good time to actually start reading the story. I do critical readings, so I will obviously also talk about the things that I like and the things that I dislike and the things that I think the story will do. In this case, obviously I know where the story is going, but still. This is The Evolutionary Reason for the Uncanny Valley by Gwydion JMF Weber. What follows is the transcript of a speech given by Professor Joseba Iturdi, Department for Evolutionary Psychology, University of the Basque Country, at the European Conference on Psychology and the Behavioral Sciences in Brighton, United Kingdom, on the 25th of July 2014. That's less than 10 years ago. More than 10 years ago. Good morning, everyone. I hope you all survived the coffee they served down in the lobby. I, for one, will be going to the bed earlier than usual these next few days. I'd like to talk this morning about a phenomenon we call the Uncanny Valley. I can hear some of you groaning in the back, and if McDormand is in the room right now, all I can say is, it's only going to get worse. The Uncanny Valley, for those among you who don't know, which I presume is not many, is a phenomenon wherein recreations of humans that look almost but not quite human elicits an apprehensive, possibly even fearful response. If the thing looks more human, like an actual human, this goes away, and the same applies when it looks less human. You wouldn't, for instance, be afraid of a toaster, or even one of those Japanese robots that seem to serve no function, but that of being robots. The entertainment industry appears to be the ones who brought this into the spotlight of modern psychology with their animated movies. Many characters were close to lifelike, but just not lifelike enough, so they elicited a fear response in adults and children alike. I discovered that this is actually something that modern 3D animators take into consideration when they make their films and games, and some of you may have read my paper wherein I investigate whether or not the Uncanny Valley is exclusive to older generations, who did not grow up with a CGI the way young people did. Alright, I'm already gonna have a little bit of a break here. I really like that it's written kind of in like matter-of-fact way, you know? Like it's written in a... Like they say at the very start there, they say that it is a transcript of a speech in a university. And I believe that the story was originally published, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the story was originally published on Reddit's No Sleep. It's either Reddit's No Sleep or his own channel, but there is a version of this story in Reddit's No Sleep as well. And since the idea of the whole subreddit is to write a story in a way that is as much as possible like this actually happened, or this happened to me, or this happened to someone, I think this is a very interesting way to approach that. Usually I see people writing these stories in a way like, this didn't, obligatory, this didn't happen to me but a friend, or just like from a first person perspective. But writing this from just like a... In a way that it says that it's supposedly a transcript is a very interesting way to approach this, I'm just trying to say. Also the use of Uncanny Valley in a horror story in a very like theoretical way like this, I enjoy a lot. It's a thing that we've talked about in a few horror courses that I've gone on, and yeah, it's a very interesting phenomenon to write in a... I don't know how to say this in a smart way, but to write it in this way makes it seem like it really lets you go in the world or in the story, presuming the truth of it. It turned out that there were no generational difference in the discomfort responses to images associated with the Uncanny Valley, and this result has been reproduced by several of our esteemed colleagues in the field. So I decided to approach the subject from a perspective of evolutionary psychology, because I find it very fascinating, and surprisingly little research has been done on the subject. I think a good question to ask is, why? Why does the Uncanny Valley exist? What is the evolutionary advantage of it? We understand the basic psychological, nervous responses that have kept us alive in nature. We need food to survive, so early in our evolution, we developed hunger. We need to take care of our bodies, that our bodies remain intact, so we have the same thing with pain. This includes simple but ingenious tricks, such as finding bitterness uncomfortable, especially as children. Many poisonous plants that can be found in the wild are bitter in taste, and children have, because of their lower body mass, a weaker immune system to withstand an accidental ingestion of toxins. And then evolution invented hot peppers, and humans were like, yes! I need the spice to feel like I'm alive! That really fucking backfired on the peppers, didn't it? Those toxins, we fucking love those toxins. Alcohol, fuck yeah. I'm already seeing a bit of foreshadowing that I didn't necessarily notice on my first reading, but I'll leave that to my own, I'll leave the specific part to my own knowledge for now, and then get back to it later. We may be an intelligent species, but these are tools that millions of years of evolution have given us to avoid situations in which we might get ourselves killed. Instinct, if you want to call it that. The most sophisticated of these, in my opinion, is fear. We may laugh at people who are afraid of the dark today, but we forget that, not so long ago, being in the dark could be very dangerous indeed. We rely on our vision much more than we do our other senses, and without it we cannot see the terrain in front of us or the predator in the corner of our eyes. This is why we are afraid of the dark. The dark is a dangerous place. Fear can also be much more complex in the way that it protects us. Many phobias are caused by traumatic events, yes, but there is also a tendency for phobias of dangerous creatures to be instinctive. Face a baby with a snake or a spider and it will be afraid even if it has never seen either animal. The basic psychological plan of snakes and spiders is apparently imprinted into the psyche of on an evolutionary level. It's in our DNA, if you want to put it in simplistic terms, because these creatures have been, and continue to be, extremely dangerous, especially in the regions where humanity originated. Fear protects us from danger, and if such complex fear responses are often seen in humans who are brought into contact with spiders and snakes, Why do we have a similar response to things which look close to human but are not quite human? Why is this response so universal if the similar response to spiders and snakes is just common? I really enjoy how the story keeps leading very slowly and methodically towards the... But actually, not the story, but let's stay in the world of this. I love how this professor's speech is slowly and slowly approaching the moment of kind of revelation, or just leading us towards the idea, like what does it mean? What does it mean that we're scared of things that are almost human but not quite? It's a lovely way to approach it. Also a very believable one. I'm not surprised that this story is one that's become kind of like it's become kind of a believable thing for many people. I'm absolutely not surprised by that. What is the danger that has, over the course of human evolution, come from things that look almost human? Why are we so afraid of them? This is hardly fear of the unknown, because things which are further away from humanity appear benign. It is present across cultures, across age groups, and even repeated confrontation with it does not alleviate the fear. Phobias, even instinctive ones, can be treated. The Uncanny Valley cannot. This suggests that, whatever the reason for its existence, it has posed a greater risk for our ancestors than venomous spiders and snakes, or whatever dangers lurked in the darkness. Evolution saw fit to allow us not to be afraid of lions anymore, but the Uncanny Valley remained. Is that true? Wait, hold on, let me... I'm quickly going to question that one. Evolution saw us fit to allow us not to be afraid of lions anymore. Is that true? I have a feeling like if a normal person would step to a lion in a in a situation of like just natural situation, I'm going to doubt that a person reacts by going like, lion, huh, pretty benign. Slight questioning of logic there to our esteemed professor, but sadly, I don't know if he will hear me say that. If dangerous... Oh, wait, you're so fucking right though, Hernekuku. Oh no. If dangerous, why friendship? Fuck, you're so right. Our brains have been absolutely destroyed by that sentence alone. Seeing a fucking hippo and thinking, oh, a hippo, it's such a friendly looking creature. I love that guy, I wanna give it a big hug. It crushes every single bone that you have, leaving only dust. Honestly, I'm more scared of hippos than lions. Way more. Hippos are 10 times scarier than lions. However, if you examine the world today, where is this danger? I see none of it. If you look in the fossil record, where has it gone? Archaeological evidence offers little but conjecture. Conjecture. I'm not from America or England. Little but conjecture. Though the archetype of the creature that pretends to be human but is really some sort of vile monstrosity is found among all mythologies. We can see, like ripples in a pond, a predator that we cannot begin to properly describe in the very foundations of our psyche. Those among you who are now afraid, and I can tell that it is many, will rationalize that this predator must have been driven to extinction if he no longer exists. But do not let fear blind you from the truth that this is not how evolution works. Any species that is driven to extinction does not simply disappear. It leaves behind populations that are adapted to survive the factors that drove to the extinction of its cousins. If we assume that the Uncanny Valley developed so we could recognize these predators, it is clear that we can no longer do that. Additionally, there are not many predators around today that are just on the foreign side of the Uncanny Valley. The overwhelming evolutionary pressure on these beings would have been to look more like us, so we would no longer recognize them as different. Professor Iturdi did not attend the next day of the conference and was reported missing by his wife 48 hours later. His contributions were stricken from the official record, and old colleagues will deny having ever heard of him. And that is the evolutionary reason for the Uncanny Valley. The first story that I've ever heard of or read from Mr. Gwydion JMF Weber, TheBurgerkrieg, or known mostly when he comes to his stories by the name Who is Betty. And just another reminder, if you want to read more of his stuff, there is the story of his from his website where you can find all his stories that he's written, I'm pretty sure. And there's also his YouTube channel where he has done personal narrations of the stories. I have so many things to say about this story. This is one of those stories that I read very quickly now, but I feel like I'm going to be able to talk about this more. And please, in the chat, give your own thoughts about the story as well. This was a very brief one compared to the ones that we've read before. The two stories, Mayhem Mountain and Don't Listen to the Music of DJ Eric Zan. It was so concise writing. It was an incredibly concise writing, just concentrated on the presentation and on getting to the kind of the peak of the story. Obviously at the end here, the overwhelming evolutionary pressure on these beings would have been to look more like us, so we would no longer recognize them as different. Like I said at first, I really enjoy the story here, considering like it gets to the point of the overwhelming evolutionary pressure on these beings would have been to look more like us, so we would no longer recognize them as different. But that is like not the only part that I love here. There are so many things that I would say about a short story like this. Making it a story that is based on like a professor having a speech. Here is one of the things that I really enjoyed. Like getting back to the thing about how this particular professor disappeared after this story came out, or after this this transcript was posted. It says here, I decided to approach the subject from a perspective of evolutionary psychology because I find it very fascinating and surprisingly little research has been done on the subject. The little research has been done on the subject is such a nice little like prelude to what is going on here. Because when he gets closer to the truth and starts doing more research about the issue, or even presents his ideas about what the Uncanny Valley, why it exists and how it works, what happens is that he gets pretty much like, it is implied that he gets fucking murked. So of course there is little research. The research hasn't gotten out. Thing about this also that I really enjoy. The story feels a bit Lovecraftian to me. Yeah, like, not to get into cliches, but exactly that. That was also what I was just about to say. The build up to a kind of like a plot twist, the way this story did, it really reminds me of things like, what was that one story that we read on the course? The guy who looks at the mirror and then it turns out that he is the monster? Like, it kind of reminds me of that story. Not in quality, because I think this is better than that story. But I mean more like the way the story goes to that point. The Outsider, yeah, that's the one. I feel like the way the story builds up to this point reminded me of The Outsider, or the way The Outsider builds up to the end of the story. Researcher looks into the obscure subjects he's never seen again. Yeah, I love that. And do you know what I also love about this story? I love the implication of the story, because this is a released transcript of a speech that someone gave that has been able to post. They have been able to release this story. Why have they been able to release this story from a thing that when a researcher tries to get close to it, he's killed? Why is this released? The way I think about this, there's obviously many ways you can think about this. It can be like released on a forum that people couldn't get to, or like something that the creatures of the Uncanny Valley, or the creatures that pretty much escaped the Uncanny Valley. It's it gives the vibe that there's one possibility that they somehow managed to avoid the creatures or the beings of the who escaped the Uncanny Valley to post this. They were able to post it in like obscurity, like that they couldn't, those creatures couldn't notice it. Or the other thing that I find way more scary is that the creatures or the beings that escaped the Uncanny Valley allowed this to happen as a warning to anyone doing research. Because at the end here, this cold ass line here, this line right here, the Professor Eternity did not attend the next day of the conference and was reported by his wife 48 hours later. His contributions were stricken from the official record and old colleagues will deny having ever heard of him. Even that part, even though I'm more and more, like, I can see how it could be that the story has been released by, I don't know, some conspiracy theorist who managed to do it without being noticed. But I also love the idea that the whole mention of wife, just mentioning that he had a wife, and mentioning that he has been never seen or heard from again, and people deny that they ever heard of him. It is a lovely way to like scare people, like scare an entire population pretty much. It is so lovely. It is such a small thing, this story, and it packs such a massive fucking punch. It was a really interesting, like, originally I remember hearing from this story by pretty much people posting this part alone. Like, I remember it was, oh yeah, now I remember, wait, let me actually find that, fuck it. Who was the guy? Wait. The guy who made Iron Lung. Who was? David Szymanski. Wait, David Szymanski. Uncanny Valley. This fucking tweet is the way that I think I heard about this story originally. This is the developer of Iron Lung, Squirrel Stapler, and also the guy who is about to make the Iron Lung movie with Markiplier. This is the way I originally heard about this story. David Szymanski writing, one of the most frightening things I've ever heard is when someone pointed out that the existence of the Uncanny Valley implies that at some point there was an evolutionary reason to be afraid of something that looked human but wasn't. Also, yes, I know there are normal, boring explanations for this, but I like the creepy implications. It's... that is... I fucking love the idea that this happened. Like, David Szymanski, one of the most, like, loved indie game developers currently when it comes to horror games. It's either like he knew and he wanted to do this just to like make people more spooked, or he was fucking tricked by this story. It is lovely. It is I love when this happens. I love when it happened with Cannibal Holocaust. I love when it's happened in one way with The Ring. I love when it happened with the Blair Witch Project. There are so many moments where this happens with media, and this is one of the most recent moments of this ever happening to my knowledge. And I've also seen this on Reddit, I've seen this on other tweets, I've seen this, I believe, mentioned on YouTube videos by like spooky top 10 scariest things in the world YouTuber like videos. I've seen this shit in so many places. It's become so prevalent. It's become so widespread. It's become so widespread, this whole concept, that it's living the life of its own. And it's fantastic. I'm just such a big fan of things like this happening, like when the story kind of escapes the writer itself. That's how you know that you've done something pretty fucking impressive in a very small format especially. God damn it. I like Lovecraft stuff, but none of the stories we've gone over at uni, except Dagon, have been that good in my opinion. I agree, yeah, I think we got bad stories to read, honestly. I love what Lovecraft did to the horror genre, but I don't love his work. That's fair. Yeah, this would have been so good. Like, the course that I went on was called the Intermediate Experience of Horror. It's a two-parter course. And, what happened to this story is such an interesting, interesting thing to analyze from the point of view of, like, how the way it's been posted in different places. Like, obviously, if you just saw this one, then you'd be like, oh yeah, clearly this is prose. This is just, this is a story, this is fiction. But when you find it, like, from David Szymanski, from a single tweet or something like that, it changes everything. Yeah, it is a beautiful short story. Also the fact that it's kind of like, that the way that the creatures have evolved is, like using humanity's own instincts against us. It is a horrifying idea. Also this part, now that I think about it, we may laugh at people who are afraid of the dark today, but we forget that not so long ago being in the dark could be very dangerous indeed. We rely on our vision much more than we do our other senses, and without it we cannot see the terrain in front of us or the predator in the corner of our eyes. I love how they use darkness, like, kind of as a metaphor, you could say? Maybe a metaphor? Well, but that we are in the dark about what is going on around us in this way. It is a believable thing as well. Like, when you just read this story and just think about the explanation of the Uncanny Valley, or explanation of phobias along with the Uncanny Valley. Yeah, it's just a very believable thing. Like, if you heard this, like, in a vacuum, you would be like, oh yeah, that is a good point, holy shit. So I understand why people like David Szymanski were, like, horrified about this idea. And just like, aside from just the obvious, like being a very good horror story in this way, it's also written very nicely, like the way the words have been chosen and the way the sentences have been structured. It does sound like a professor talking. Generally, at least. Yeah, it feels like a professor talking to a bunch of people. Just students, it's, I don't wanna suck the dick of Gwydion too much here from this story, but yeah, I really enjoy the way that this story approached an issue like this, topic like this. Anyways, like I said, on this stream we're not going through one story, we're going through multiple ones. This was pretty much an introduction more than anything, also one of the shorter ones of these stories. So I'm going to move into the next one right now. Alright, fellas. About the time to get into the next story, Yamantau. Now, at this point, I'm going into the darkness with you guys. This is something I have no idea about what this story is going to be. I have not read a single other story by Gwydion, who is Betty. I haven't touched these things at all. I only read the first one because my roommate recommended it to me, and also because I kind of wanted to get an idea from a very short story about what the rising of this person is like. So now, I am stepping into the abyss, and I want you to hold my hand while I do it. This is important. We all need to do this together, because if we don't, then who are we? The whole of humanity is about doing things together. Thank you for being here. I'm having a lot of fun with this series. This has been the most fun I've had streaming in ages. Next up, another story. This is Yamantau by Gwydion JMF Weber. Born in the Yaroslav town of Danilov, Yermolai... Man, I'm gonna have a rough time pronouncing this. I assume like Russian or like Eastern Bloc names. I am gonna have a problem with this. Born in the Yaroslav town of Danilov, Yermolai Savelyovich Rebro was 23 years old when he was reassigned to the Urals in 1975. Coming from an affluent household of party functionaries dedicated to maintaining the integrity of the Soviet Union, he was loyal to the motherland and had unshakable faith in the ideals of communism. Ooh, okay. Are we gonna get into like alternative history? A bit of maybe alternative history type stories? Let's see. General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev read his name once on a list of young officers recommended for reassignment to a top-secret installation that had brought him and many other Soviet leaders a number of sleepless nights. If one was prone to believing rumors, one might have believed that Stalin himself had been afraid of it. Ooh. It was an assignment that required the most loyal, capable and dedicated people. The kind of people who believed in the wisdom of the party and its leadership and would sacrifice anything for the Soviet Union, its citizens and possibly the world itself. People who would have been useful in many great positions but were needed more urgently in the mountains. It was because Brezhnev signed that very document that Sergeant Major Rebrov arrived at the foot of Mount Yamantau on a brisk spring afternoon after an 8-hour trip on the back of a military truck, together with 19 other men. Alright, I'm already seeing that this one takes a more like art writing approach compared to the first story. Saying the brisk afternoon. They were loaded off in the courtyard of a barracks complex built around a gigantic door leading straight into the mountain itself. The soldiers out here, who inspected the new arrivals one by one and verified their identities, looked at them with pity. 3 of the young recruits were pulled away. They were not meant to enter the complex, but become part of the outside barracks. Though they seemed disappointed, the other soldiers told them they should be relieved. They were the lucky ones. An alarm sounded, and the great door into the mountain opened. It was thicker than Yermolai was tall, full of complex mechanisms and heavy locking bars. Machine guns were pointed at it from several towers. An old man stepped out into the courtyard, flanked by 4 lieutenants. He wore the beige uniform and blue hat of the NKVD, and had the look of someone who had seen nothing but war in his long life. Even so, he stood straight as an arrow, bearing whatever burden was on his shoulders, with the iron discipline of a seasoned military commander. You know, this already reminds me a bit of, like when I read Mayhem Mountain here. The writing style reminds me a bit of the way Rebecca Klingel or C.K. Walker writes her stories. Like kind of like the approach, like the way that it's said, like though they seemed disappointed the other soldier told them they should be relieved they were the lucky ones, kind of reminds me of the way that in Mayhem Mountain Rebecca wrote something along the lines like and that was the last time I would ever share words with him or something like that. Pretty much preluding that something bad is going to happen. He introduced himself as Colonel Porfiry Emelianovich Buzinski and commanded the recruits to follow him into the mountain. When they were all inside the garishly lit, downward sloping concrete tunnel, an atavistic kind of fear welled up in Yermolai's stomach. It was impossible to judge the size of the underground complex, but the weight of it felt gigantic. A lieutenant led them to a sleeping room where each had been assigned a bunk. Nobody spoke. Silence had made this place its home. It seemed like steps did not make a sound on the linoleum floors of the long hallways. When they had stowed their luggage, the lieutenant led them into a dimly lit classroom. The chalkboard was obscured with a heavy curtain. Colonel Buzinski was sitting behind a heavy desk, inspecting his new recruits one by one. "I am a killer of enemies," the old man said when they were all seated. "When I was young, I founded the Great Patriotic War and killed over 100 German fascists. I was among those who liberated Auschwitz. It was a place of horror, unlike I had ever seen." He rose from his chair and began pacing in front of them. "Every day I wish myself back to this place. Compared to where I am today, it was idyllic, peaceful, even cozy. Yes, you heard me right. I would trade this life away even if it meant experiencing the horrors of the war every day, and it would not be a difficult decision." Thank you for the accent. Yeah, I have to do it. Should I do more like should I be more like Measurehead Measurehead from Disco Elysium? Yermolai frowned. Going to war, the glory of the Soviet Union. Does that mean was the glory? Anyways, going to war was the glory of the Soviet Union, especially fighting an enemy as heinous as the Nazis must have been a great honor. Only the weak were broken by the trepidations of war. the trepidations of war, but Buzinski was a colonel. His wisdom had to be respected. Instead of offering further explanation, the colonel pulled away the curtains, revealing not a chalkboard, but a window. Behind it, a handful of men and women in white lab coats sat in a canteen eating borscht. They all had heavy bags under their eyes, their stares trailing off into the distance every few moments. None seemed to notice the soldiers looking at them. The window only went one way. Your low fascist body count betrays your degeneracy. I can't do his voice at all. If I try to do his voice more, I'll fail miserably. I would like to direct your attention... Sorry, I forgot the accent. I'd like to direct your attention here. Buzinski pointed at the left corner of the room, where a man who had just entered was pressing buttons next to an aluminum box. A few moments later, a light blinked green, and the man opened the box to find his own bowl of borscht inside. This is not a machine. These are cooks on the other side of the panel, and he has just communicated to them how he would like his lunch. It is imperative that he be unable to speak with them in any other way, to ensure this is our mission here. The colonel pulled a canvas over the window and a projector clicked on in the back of the room. A floor plan of the complex appeared, laid out in 3 concentric circles. The outermost was the thinnest, it was green, designated military area, and isolated from the next ring, save for a number of locked doors. The science area was blue and featured many more rooms with cryptic designations, some of which are too small to read even for someone with Yermalai's excellent eyesight. They included things like stereophone dimmer, obscience chamber, and albumin sieve. The center, occupying most of the base, was left entirely blank. Subject was wall. Was wall it said? Was what it said? Our duty at this installation is to observe and monitor these scientists. They know we are here, and they know we are here to keep them safe. But they cannot talk to us, and we cannot talk to them. We make their food, clean their chambers, and sometimes go in to apprehend and pacify individuals who have lost their mind. But we cannot, under any circumstances, talk to them. Yermalai felt the need to raise his hand. Why is this, sir? Colonel Buzinski's grin looked more like a snarl. Because of their work. Unsatisfied with the response, he raised his hand again. What is their work, sir? I don't know why one of those guys has a voice like that. They do the same thing we do. Observe and monitor. Interesting! Alright, that's a good moment to actually have a break now. The ad break should be starting in 40-ish seconds and it will last for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. It will last 3 minutes. During the 3 minutes, go take some water, go take some food. Be prepared to continue, don't go anywhere, because if you go anywhere I will know, and I have your address. I am inside your computer like a little rat chewing on the wires and gathering information. You are not safe anymore watching the stream. After a month of service, confined to the underground space of Yamantau base, not having seen the sun for what felt like a lifetime, Yermalai was beginning to grasp the routines and practices of the complex. Even the simplest of tasks were fastidiously described in various manuals, and everyone with experience working here was highly scrupulous of following protocol. Peculiar events were beginning to pile up. The first week, Yermalai was under the impression that one of his comrades in the sleeping quarters was a loud snorer. Every night in his dreams he heard calm, rhythmic breathing, and he wasn't the only one. However, when he awoke early one night, at first suspecting that he had been roused by the snorer, he found that the room was utterly silent. After a visit to the lavatory, he had resumed sleeping and the breathing returned. One day, while mopping the floors, a fellow sergeant who had served there for some time told them to put their ears to the ground. Believing at first that it was some sort of chicanery, Yermalai obliged reluctantly. What he heard drove a cold shiver down his spine. It was a slow, regular thumping, dulled by however many layers of concrete it was passing through. One of his comrades said it sounded like a heartbeat, but Jarmolai could not concur. Hearts beat twice in any given interval, but this thumping only occurred once. He developed the habit of putting his ear on the ground from time to time. The thumping was always there. Ooh! Ooh! Alright. It's like a telltale heart, but it's just one half of it. One thump. 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 I really like the way it's approaching this so far. It's the start, like the way they described like going like underground through a door or whatever they said. It kind of gave me like not to say the obvious one where we're talking about like Russian or Russian adjacent media, but like I was kind of thinking of something like doors that you go through in Metro. If anyone has played Metro. And just the soldiers going through there as well. Jarmolai was rolling a food car through the long tunnel leading to the northern monitoring post, where men with empty eyes and haggard faces listened to microphone feeds from the science area through heavy headsets, when he was told to breach containment for the first time. An alarm howled and a senior lieutenant ran past him, giving orders to stop pushing the cart and get geared up. Get up. Next to each of the doors into the science area, all of which were flanked by 2 guards at all hours of the day, was a locker with breaching equipment for up to 20 soldiers. Jarmolai put on a loose containment suit of brown plastic, donned sunglasses that blocked his peripheral vision, and inserted rubber plugs into his ears. Everyone in the breaching party of 4 was given a baton. Only the most senior officer received a small handgun loaded with non-lethal ammunition. Sunglasses that block his peripheral vision and insert rubber plugs into his ears. So they're like avoiding some like sensory effects there. I wonder if the heartbeat or whatever it is gonna get worse the lower they go. That is what I'm gonna go for right now. Like the deeper they go into the science area, the deeper they go there, the more deafening or horrifying the sounds will be. Just the constant thudding. Worse. My guess so far. When they entered the science area, Jarmolai could hear the whining of atonal klaxons through his earplugs. Heavy fire doors had blocked the hallways around them, as well as access to the individual laboratories. Jesus Christ, Nachorror, what the fuck was that? As well as access to the individual laboratories. Under no circumstances could the soldiers know what was happening inside. Scientists coward? Coward. Oh my god. Sorry, I'm so tired. Scientists cowered in the corners, horrified looks on their faces. One came running, pointing them down a hallway. The lieutenant took a lead. It did not take long to find the reason for the alarm. Another scientist, a man in his 40s with Siberian features, was standing at an intersection of 2 corridors, punching wildly in all directions. His shouts cut through the klaxon and the earplugs, yet were too quiet for Jarmolai to understand if they were coherent at all. Quickly and with overwhelming force, the soldiers subdued the man, administered a sedative, and slipped a straitjacket over him. When they had carried him back into the military area, he was put on a stretcher and thrown into a padded cell. 6 days later, he was delivered to the surface in a body bag. Ooh! Ooh, that's nice. Alright, already getting some questions. Not answers, questions. What causes a person to react like that? Why was it just this guy who was reacting like that and not the other people in the science area? When he was taken away in a body bag, had he died from natural causes or like from something that was happening inside there in the science area, or was he put down? Like a dog. A filthy dog! Yermolai inquired with one of the senior officers. It seemed that something like this happened half a dozen times a year. Sometimes it was one of the monitors who snapped, but those were usually easier to handle. The use of lethal force was authorized in such situations. It was not the only time a person died. One morning Yermolai awoke to find his bunk neighbor, a young man from Moscow named Dmitri, dead. His mouth was open in a silent scream, his eyes were bloodshot and wide open. Nobody had heard a sound that night, least of all Yermolai. They were given an extra ration of good food that day, and told that Dmitri had died of an unexpected heart attack. I love that fucking sentence. They were given an extra ration of good food. Not the bad borscht that they always get every day, this was the good food. They got sandwiches with this weird substance on it, I believe it's called butter. With butter and cutlets. A bit of questioning revealed that unexpected heart attacks were a common cause of death in the Yamantau complex, and usually included symptoms such as sweating blood and having burns on one's internal organs. Oh, that line fucks hard. Oh, that line fucks hard. Sweating blood and having burns on internal organs. Ah, that's awesome. That is so fucking twisted. Ah. Oh, I can't. There is something like you can't even comprehend that. It's such a horrifying thought. Jesus Christ. It was after 3 months of service that Yermolai and his comrades were allowed their first visit to the surface. When he stepped into the barracks and smelled the fresh mountain air, he realized that he had forgotten what the sky looked like. They spent 3 days of leisure time with the soldiers stationed at the surface. Though they were not allowed to discuss the goings-on inside the complex, the recruits who had arrived with them and were picked for surface duty commented that they all looked half dead while fishing in a small pond. When they went back into the mountain, Colonel Buzinski was already waiting for Yermolai. "You have been asking many questions," he said in his sparsely furnished office. The only non-essential object in his room seemed to be a bronze-plated orrery, and even there Yermolai could not be certain it wasn't somehow important. "I apologize, sir. If you wish me to stop, I shall do so," Yermolai responded. "Yes and no. You ask questions, but you are good with protocol. You do it in manner that is not subversive, with consideration for operational morale. This makes you leadership material. It is important for people in senior positions to both think and follow orders, not out of fear, but because they understand the importance of command. I am promoting you to junior lieutenant." "Will I get briefed on what the purpose of this base is, sir?" "No. There are only 4 people alive who have a full picture of this, and I am the only one of them currently stationed here." It was disappointing, but Yermolai trusted the competence of the Soviet institutions. Another 3 months later, after the next visit to the surface, he was promoted again to overseeing the monitoring room. He was without a headset, and it was explicitly not his duty to listen to the microphones inside the science area, but it was impossible not to hear a thing or two. The first thing he realized was that the scientists were not speaking Russian. They weren't speaking any language he could classify at all. It included sounds he'd never heard a human being make before, from hisses to whistles to grumbles. He asked one of the monitors if he understood what they were saying, and the man simply shook his head. Whether that was a no or a refusal to answer his question, Yermolai could not tell. Oh, that is... Oh my god, it's... Ugh. It is such a fucking spooky idea. Like, going back to him wearing the... Like, having the glasses that prevents you from seeing from your peripheral vision. And also the fact that he had the earplugs so he couldn't hear properly inside there what the things were saying. The people were saying. It's such a nice way to like keep it a secret until now. One morning he awoke to a gunshot. Considering it had come from the adjacent barracks, it should have been much louder than it was. One of the monitors had committed suicide. Colonel Buzinski assured him not to worry, as this only happened to the monitors, never the other soldiers. It's fine, it's just the monitors who shoot themselves in the head. Yermolai did not feel assured at all. The monitors were working under his supervision. He cared about the people under his command, even if he did not understand what they did. For a week, the scientists seemed more agitated than usual. Though the one-way windows, Yermolai could see them shuffling about more quickly, exchanging concerned glances as they spoke to each other. Their chatter became quieter, more animated. One of them snapped and almost killed another. There was no way for them to know that one of the monitors had died, but they were reacting to it anyway. Shortly after his first anniversary of being stationed at Yamantau base, Yermolai ascended to the surface with Colonel Buzinski. At first he thought a new batch of recruits had arrived, but waiting in the courtyard was only a tall, middle-aged woman smoking a cigarette, a new addition to the science team. She did not salute, but continued to smoke, looking at the mountains and the forests. When her cigarette was finished, she dropped the butt on the ground, took several deep breaths, and looked at the colonel with determination. "I need to remember what it's like." "You'll forget soon enough," Buzinski responded. When the heavy door closed behind them on their way back down, Yermolai realized the truth. This woman knew what she was getting into better than he had. Once she put on that lab coat, she would never return to the surface again. She would be trapped underneath Mount Yamantau until the day she died. A moment later, Yermolai realized that the same was true for him. He would see the surface from time to time, spend a few days out in the sun, but deep inside his heart he knew he would never be able to leave again. Whatever the work they were doing down here was, it was important enough to make loyal soldiers and intelligent scientists disappear forever. It could only be of the utmost importance. That is such an interesting way to end it. Oh, I'm so sorry, I just noticed that you guys weren't seeing the last line there. I'm so sorry, I need to That was Yamantau! I will have my thoughts out very soon. I'm gonna take a bathroom break and be right back. Please guys, tell me your thoughts about the story. It definitely ended in a very abrupt way. Yeah, I'll be right back to discuss the story. Yeah, let's get into the analysis of the story. Yeah, like this kind of reminded me, it gave me the same vibes as if anyone remembers the Russian sleep experiments. Obviously just from the Russian part, that is one thing, but also because of the way that what happened to the scientists who were there, like, going crazy or losing their minds, suddenly starting to work in, non-human ways, kind of like seeming like they're getting information that, normal humans shouldn't have. Yeah, that gave me a lot of those vibes. And the ending, like I said, it felt very abrupt. Just like a very sudden... Someone committed suicide, things are going worse. After that, they meet a lady who seems to be surprisingly in the know here. And then it's just, it could only be of utmost importance. I'm wondering if Yamantau is a part of a series. Okay, never mind. I don't think it is. It doesn't give the reader much to work with, which I like. Yeah, same. Someone could, like, complain about, like, how they leave you kind of, like, in the, like, away from the information. I don't see that as a problem myself. Also, it could only be of the utmost importance. It's, I feel like you could also see this story as a, sorry. I feel like you could also see this story kind of as a moral allegory. A bit. Like, the main character that we have here, was it Yermolai? Yermolai? Not Yermolai. Yeah, Yermolai. I feel like Yermolai is, tremendously trustworthy person, like to the institutions of Soviet Union or institutions in general. But it was said like here. Where was the part that he said? There we go. Yermolai Savelyovich Rebrov was 23 years old when he was assigned to the Urals in 1975. Coming from an affluent household of party functionaries dedicated to maintaining the integrity of the Soviet Union, he was loyal to the motherland and had unshakable faith in the ideals of communism. There was also mentioned here of the institutions. I'm gonna actually wait. Oh wait, do you have to search it differently from this document? You can use that search function, I don't think. Yeah, no, you can't use that one, sorry. Anyway, so it did say the words, like trust in the institutions here. So I guess it, not necessarily a moral allegory against like trust in institutions, maybe more like, slightly about like blind trust in general. Like where it could lead a person. But it is very difficult to analyze the story more than that, because it does leave you in the dark. Completely intentionally, obviously. But I did like the build-up. I feel like I could, if I read this another time, I could find more and more things in the story. Like these slight, very slight things here. Another reason why this reminded me of the Russian sleep experiment is because the character, or well, the people who are like the test subjects pretty much, well, everyone here is obviously a test subjects, like they are all test subjects in here. But the mentioning of here, like, they all had heavy bags under their eyes, their stares trailing off in the distance every few moments. None seem to notice the soldiers looking at them. It seems like they are simply just like, well, not just that, but they are like, incredibly sleep deprived. They look like Nemesis Moon looks every day. Get fucked. It also leaves it completely unknown, like, what the beating was. I thought some of the references to Soviet communism were maybe a bit simplistic. Yeah, they were. Yeah. Yeah, I would say so, yeah. But then again, I kind of feel like the perspective is from, it is from a perspective of a character who is, like, completely loyal and unshakable. So I could see, like, maybe, and young, like 23 years old, like, I could see how they could, like, also, not necessarily the writer, but the character could have a very simplistic and trustworthy, and, it's almost like similar in a way that, like, if you had, like, an American who had grown in the, like, religious South, and was, like, really, taught to be like a patriot, would be like, yeah, we are in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Yeah, this is the leaders of the free world, and just like completely believing in that, even though it's an incredibly simplistic and dumb idea of like what a country or a nation is. I like how the ends with the main character still trusting the institutions. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I kind of feel about this story. Yeah, I love that end. Like, I'm wondering if, this ending almost feels like it could be a quote from somewhere. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a quote of a world leader, Soviet or otherwise, who might have, like, explained some research or something like that by saying this sentence. It is of utmost importance, or it could be of the utmost importance. Yeah, it would be very interesting to hear from who is better, or TheBurgerkrieg or Gwydion, like, what the inspiration was for this story. Also, I don't want to say Lovecraftian in this one as well, but it did give me Lovecraftian vibes as well, from the way the story is told. Like the beating in the ground and people slowly succumbing to insanity in that way. Starting to speak languages that are not known by humans and sounds and that. The way also the way they describe the scientists here also seems a bit like animalistic to me. Like, not just the ones that go like insane and start like trashing around and everything, but even like scientists covered in the corners, horrified looks on their face. One came running, pointing them down a hallway. Like, they don't say anything sensible to anyone. They don't communicate in many like complex ways here. That is also the interesting thing. We never hear what the scientists are actually researching, do we? All we know is that we have the observers, the military areas. What was the areas again? Wait, let me see here. There was the military area, the science area. And the science area is blue and was featured many more rooms with cryptic designations, some of which were too small to even read, and some with normalized excellent... for someone with normalized excellent eyesight. They included things like stereophone dimmer, obeisance chamber, and albumin sieve. Wait, what is obeisance? Okay, it might be obeisance. And obeisance means... oh my god. Oh no. Obeisance means a gesture expressing differential respect, such as a bow or courtesy. So what does it mean that it's an obeisance chamber? Are they praying to like a god or showing respect to like some entity, some like divine being? Albumin. Isn't albumin like a hold on. Isn't albumin kind of like with a snake? Or something like that? No, it's... It's a white type of substance that exists in parts of blood and in egg whites. What do you mean, albumin sieve? I didn't even I didn't even recognize that. What if it's a chamber with pictures of Stalin you're supposed to bow to? Of course, that makes sense. Could it be obedience just typed wrong? No, I don't think so. Actually... okay, it could be obedience written wrong, because there have been some, like, slight miswritings here, like, just letters or singular words. It could be either obedience written wrong, or obeisance. Obeisance, yeah, obedience, it's either obedience chamber or obeisance chamber, but they both mean the same thing pretty much. Like, oh, well, okay, the other one is like obeying the rules and everything, and the other one is like respect, like high respect. And what are they sieving? Okay, are they sieving the albumin away from the people's blood or from egg whites? And if it's egg whites, what is laying the eggs? I really like this. I'm gonna read this at some point, most likely, actually, because I really fucking love it. But it's what is that thing called? It reminded me of the Mystery Flesh Pit. If anyone hasn't experienced the insanity that is Mystery Flesh Pit, I would love to do a like deep dive on the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park. It is one of the coolest, in my opinion, one of the most amazing online horror things ever made. It is easily one of my favorite. Just the description of certain words here give me so many vibes like albumin sieve or obeisance chamber. Make this a Nachorror episode. I absolutely will. I didn't even think about it, but I absolutely fucking will. Yeah, 100%. I wanna go through it. I don't know if I even wanna go through it in a very like specific way. I could just go and find some links and read random things there. I do need to ask Trevor for permission. I want everything to be. I want every single thing that I read to be something that I've asked permission of. It's like, if you... I hate how people do, like, pretty much, like, steal stories. Stealing content in general is a thing that I dislike, and I try to avoid it as much as possible. Obviously, there are stories that have been written by, like, anonymous people, who I can't contact and ask for permission, and in some of those I'm just going to assume that the answer would be yes. One of them is going to be the Goatman story. Do we have anything else we want to talk about this story? Say anything else? I could soon move into the next one as well. There is something I want to kind of check in the future about the story, which is the mention of Jermolai's excellent eyesight. I kind of want to see if there is something about his excellent eyesight that's kind of like contradicts with the story, or kind of like gets verified in the story. I've had a lot of fun with this. It's been a very interesting, a very different feeling than reading one long story. It might be a bit easier to kind of keep up by reading multiple short ones. Great practice as well. And I got to do my perfect Russian accent as well. Alright, next story. After this I'm gonna have another ad break coming, so I might be able to read this before that. At least most of it. Next story. Let me just make sure, actually, by scrolling. Alright, there we go. I'm gonna quickly do one more thing. I'm gonna raise the minimum wage of United States. No, I'm gonna raise the story a bit higher, just to make it possible to scroll all the way to the end, so it looks kinda sensible. I prefer shorter horror in general. Kinda me too. It kinda varies. I do like really long ones as well, like 5-parters, 10-parters, if they do it well. That is true. That is a good point. I kinda, the thing that I like about longer horror is that when you have a longer horror story, it kind of makes you, if it's well written, it makes you like care about the characters and what happens to them. And in horror, especially considering that the things that can happen to people in horror are often way more horrifying than things that can happen in any other form of media. Because of that, it's very interesting to me to have like long form horror. Anyways, let's get to the language. The language is something that I'm almost certain, just from the idea of it and the way that it's looking like, that this is going to be kind of similar to the Evolutionary Reason for the Uncanny Valley. But let's see. I might be completely wrong here. This is The Language by Gwydion JMF Weber. There's a fairly obvious problem with knowing what people whose language you do not speak are saying. You can't understand them. Have you ever had the feeling that a group speaking a language you don't know is talking about you, but you can't really be sure? You'd have to rely on a third party to translate for you. And if they speak the language, who knows if they are not just in on the joke? How can you trust your translator? You shouldn't. I mean, you can, most of the time, for most languages. There's just no reason to lie to you. But the doubt keeps nagging at the back of your mind. When you watch the news and someone from a distant country is overdubbed because they don't speak English, can you really be certain that what the station has translated is actually what these people are saying? Certainly if they did lie about such a thing, viewers who speak that language would invariably find out, right? They would call up the news station or put a video on YouTube or post it on Reddit, and people would learn about the translator's lie. Except how can you trust them either? Alright, this is actually an interesting thing. I've thought about this before. Like, how much we trust translations, especially after I worked as a fucking translator. Like, the way I when I worked, I did some like AV translation for subtitles. There were times where I was like listening to like a German movie that had like English subtitles, and the English subtitles were wrong. Just like some of the things that were just like plainly didn't understand what they were saying. It wasn't out of malice, like this story seems to maybe be going towards, but it was about like just like ignorance. Like the people who translated them clearly didn't understand German like culture, or like what even like very quick sentences might mean. or God bless that one. Oh my God, there was one movie. I can't get into it too much, but there was one movie that had like the most horrible translations ever in English. That was so bad that I had to pretty much learn a new language while translating to actually be able to translate it. So yeah, translating language, not an easy thing. But can you even trust me that I translated it correctly? What if I translated it in a way that was just meant to look like it is? They never checked. Or did they? Can you trust the people who checked my translations? What if there was a language where you never knew what is being said, because nobody who speaks it will actually ever correctly translate anything said in it? After all, without speaking that language yourself, how would you know that not every potential translator is in on it? It's absurd, right? Philological horror. Amazing description. Except it's not. There is such a language. There is a group of people on this planet who speak their own language and openly communicate about things you don't even want to think about. But nobody ever calls them out on it because they are all a part of the conspiracy. The fact that it is as audacious as it is makes the whole thing so foolproof, because who would ever believe something as absurd as this? Okay, I'm kind of losing the story at this point, to be fair. This sentence here, this whole thing here, is a thing that you could say about any conspiracy theory. I really wish that this part of the story is a bit different than it's gonna go for, because like you could replace a lot of words here with anything else and make it the most general conspiracy theory ever. Like everyone is in on it. How would you know that everyone is not in on it? All of the media is in on it. All of the scientists are in on it. Everyone is in on it. But you know. Now you know the information. And you cannot trust the people who could question you on the information. It is a bit like a... It is a very, very generic... just a concept for a conspiracy theory. Anyways. It could still get good. You could, after all, just learn that language, right? There's causes for every language. There are causes for this language, and there's causes for this language, and so you'd know, and you could reveal the truth to the world. Except when you do learn this language, be it on purpose or by accident, like I did, you will also realize the power required to keep a conspiracy like this quiet. I mean, there's more than just a couple dozen people who speak this language. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions. They are all Finnish people. The Finnish language isn't even real. There could be hundreds of thousands of Finns, if not millions. It doesn't make sense. What do you mean SSR and LLR endings? What do you mean an illative and an adhesive? It doesn't make any sense. Sorry. If they kept a conspiracy like this quiet, what would happen to you if you told anyone? Certainly no one would believe you, but you would have outed yourself. It's perfect, really. If you have a theory as to which language it is, drop it. It's not that one. It is also not your second pick or your third. Your best shot is to make a list of all languages, randomize it, and then... no matter... Oh, sorry. Oh, I completely jumped like many lines there, sorry. It's also not your second pick or your third. Your best shot is to make a list of all languages, randomize it, and then start learning. You'll never guess the right one, and I sure as shit would not tell you, even if you did. Because here's the thing, every language you learn changes the way you think. If you speak more than one language, you'll understand this process of gaining access to a new mode of thought, no matter how similar it may be to the other languages you speak. Learning this clandestine language has changed the way of my way of thinking too. What these people, we, are doing is important, and if you don't speak our language, you will not be able to understand why. In fact, you would try to stop us, and that cannot happen. This is my attempt at getting you to learn a new language at random, so you'll eventually find the right one. That is the only safe way for us to recruit. Go on the journey, join us, and understand the truth. Our numbers are growing every day as our mission reaches its conclusion. Help us save humanity. Learn the language. Alright, the ending was better than the whole conspiracy thing in the middle. kind of like bringing you like we are in on it. You can, if you learn the right one, you will know. It did get better, quite a bit better actually. It's I don't know. I think out of all the stories that I've read so far, this might be my least favorite one of Gwydion's work. It is very short, but it's kind of. This story is just a trick to make the reader learn more languages. Yeah, yeah, I kind of get that vibe. Yeah, I mean, it's a good reason. It's not a good reason to learn new languages, but you should learn new languages. I want to learn Northern Sami in the future because that is important to me and my culture, and I'm really missing being able to speak a language like that, a language that is very small. Anyways, I do have a lot more to say about this because there was one part here that is actually incredibly interesting to me, and I wanna like get into it more. Let me actually read you first before I get into my own one. I thought it was fun, starting off as a conspiracy, but ending up musing about how languages change your thinking and how we should learn more languages. Yeah, I like the ending. Yeah, the ending took it way like to a better level to me. The negative part was around here. Yeah. Just this part here was kind of like, oh no, oh no, 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 oh no, no, no. But then the end part here, the last 3 paragraphs, I fucking loved. It really went the right way. Here was the part. Every language you learn changes the way you think. If you speak more than one language, you'll understand this process of gaining access to new model of thought, no matter how similar it may be to the other languages you speak. I just recently read an article about this. About this, this Norwegian, a Norwegian researcher who was in his home village, I believe it was Trodden. He was in Trodden, and then he noticed that Norwegian people in northern Norway turned their TVs off at almost the exact same times, which was a very peculiar event. And he started asking the people why this is happening and why they turned the TV off. And it turned out it happened because the people always turned the TV off when Finnish TV like plays started. When Finnish like is it called like TV novella or something? Anyways, when Finnish TV plays started, they turned it off, even with subtitles, because they couldn't understand the way the story went in those. And the guy started researching more about like how this works and why it happened like that, and he pretty much came to the conclusion that the entire like the way a language works changes the way a culture thinks, and the way a people of a country might think. And for instance, there was things like Finnish people, when they use their language, the language is more about like a relationship between two things or two characters or two people, the relationship between things, while the language of like Indo-European languages are more about what was it like changes, like kind of like mobility between two. I can't explain it well, but it was pretty much like the change between being a relationship focused and like things changing focus. And this for instance, what's happened in Finnish stories a lot is that it's very unclear if it's day, if it's night, if the day has changed, if whenever people change rooms, it might happen very abruptly to people who are from like not Finnish, like from like Norway or stuff like that. And the experience they have with the media, because of that, it's like it's more difficult to keep up with the story, just because the way the language works, like changes the entire way what that language presents works as well. Like dynamism? Yeah, I think that is the right word. Let me make sure real quick that it is, but I'm pretty sure. But anyways, yeah, just like the changes of things, the way things move. Like for instance, like, sorry, I'm gonna get into this because this is an incredibly interesting thing to me. Like for instance, there is like in Finnish language there is a lot of like very simplistic and very like short movement things. Like if I talk about like I lift up my phone, for instance, I can say I like often I would say I take it pöydältä, which is like from the table. But in other languages it's easier to say something like up from the table, or like in Finnish you can also say like ylös pöydältä, but it is not as like important to say the direction what you are taking a thing from or to a thing. It's way easier to just say it with the like end part of the word. And this was also visible in like Finnish and Norwegian sports like narrations, because in Norway people would always they would talk more about like where the puck in like ice hockey is going in the rink, and in Finland it was more about like who you are moving the puck to. Like it might be like Marttinen is has passed the buck to or the thing to Heikkinen, but in Norwegian it would be more like the puck is passed from there to that place or that direction, or from this player to that area. So yeah, less about relationships and more about like dynamics. Yeah, I meant that other languages are more focused on dynamic stuff, like movement, for instance. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it's incredibly interesting, and I really wanna someday like do research on that myself. I'm thinking like it could be an interesting topic for either like a bachelor's degree or maybe a master's degree. It's an incredibly interesting topic to me, and the fact that it changes everything, like everything changes because of how language works. Yeah, that was the most important part to me about the language. Just the whole idea that yeah, if you speak a language, then it changes your thinking completely. It makes this more believable, this part, like just the whole idea, like if you learn the language, if you learn the right language, the language itself kind of gives you the information that you have learned the right language that this guy is talking about here. I want to find out who that researcher actually is. Wait, let me check really quick. It was miten kieli liittyy ajatteluun? Yeah, and if anyone wants to I guess this won't help because I don't know if this is even translated. Yeah, I don't think this is translated to English at all. It is Frode J. Strömnes. Frode J. Strömnes. Yeah, sadly there isn't a English page on the guy. And there is very, very little information about him as a researcher from like just online sources. I could find more about that guy. I wanna read his books more. Sadly, he's dead, so he won't be doing any more of this research. So it's even more important to kind of like take hold of research on how language affects thinking. It is a very under-researched topic. Anyways, yeah, this part of the language was actually incredibly interesting to me. Really made me think about the stuff I read. This is also a nice coincidence because I believe that Nemesis Moon... I believe that you recommended this story to me before I mentioned to you the article that I read. Right? I'm almost certain that it was before, right? Yeah, I remember it being like that. It's very interesting because it is like one of my big like hyperfixations right now as topics come. Anyways, I don't think we have much more to say about the language, so I might as well move to the last one. To the last story that we have, which is Memories of Deep Sleep. There we go. Memories of Deep Sleep by Gwydion JMF Weber, aka TheBurgerkrieg, aka... Who is Betty? This is a confession. Many priests have taken it from me over the years, but it has not helped. I am hoping that this does, because I am a coward. I will not attach my name or the names of those involved to it. I am a person with a life. I may want the truth out there to appease my own conscience, but I do not want to pay the price for what I did. In the early 90s, a pharmacological team in Ireland developed a drug that would, in conjunction with mental training, significantly improve people's ability to recall their dreams during REM sleep. Due to a lack of funding, clinical trials were never finished and the drug never hit a market where it would not have been particularly useful in the first place. That is until 10 years after research was stopped. I read about it in an obscure medical journal. I found the data available to me so interesting that I decided to talk to a clinical somnologist and a medical chemist about a hypothesis I was able to formulate. Not only did they confirm my idea, they added some of their own. Not a year later, we had a small team of doctors and research scientists assembled, and enough funding to look into something truly groundbreaking, simply because it was interesting. One of the great advantages of working for the military is that there's always more than enough money to go around. Another great thing is that they can provide physically healthy test subjects who are more than happy to take on great risks for the country. Not that anyone could have suspected how much this study would go wrong. At the time, nobody even knew for certain if we dreamed during deep sleep. It was such a promising field that held so many potential applications. The military wanted us to look into loyalty hypnotherapy, the unconscious learning of skills, potential treatments for PTSD and other psychological conditions. After several failed attempts, we managed to synthesize a drug that would allow for the perfect recall of dreams experienced during deep sleep. The interesting and ultimately devastating thing was that we went from no memory to perfect memory with no gradient of steps in between. Of course, we didn't know this at the time, and I do like to tell myself that there was no way we could have. Alright, I'm already having like ideas where the story is going to go. I'm feeling that there is a reason that we don't remember what we dream, and it's like a developed, maybe a developed or another kind of like a defense mechanism. That if you would remember what you dream of, it would be horrifying and you couldn't handle it, like your brain just would fucking shut down. That is my theory so far, and if that is true, it reminds me of a Stephen King story, that I can't remember the name of right now. It's called like The Flick or something like that. We were testing 5 new mixtures on 5 different test subjects at the same time. After a night in the sleep lab, none of the soldiers recalled anything but their REM dreams. That is, except for one of them, whom I will henceforth be referring to as Samuel. Samuel claimed that he had very vague recollections of spending many hours in a place of untold wonders, but also chasms deep with fear. His EEG in the sleep lab had shown some strange activity just before waking up, and when he did, he seemed very confused for roughly a minute. We hadn't considered the effects these dreams might have on the psyche of our subjects outside purely hypothetical discussions over wine and cheese. Nobody even suspected that Samuel, who felt great and whose vitals were as optimal as one might expect those of a soldier to be, had been damaged in ways I still don't fully understand. We only found out that he was lying about the effects of the drug when we did another batch of tests. This time 10 subjects, including Samuel, were given the same drug before they went to sleep. How should we have known that they'd have to be restrained? Ah, alright. Alright. You fucked up. You tried to play God, didn't you? 8 out of 10 test subjects woke up with the same confusion and unusual EEG activity as Samuel had in their respective sleep labs. Of the remaining 2, one was catatonic while the other, let's call him John, was having a severe panic attack. As a soldier, his method of coping was to immediately spring into action. Instead of waiting for my team to make the rounds for his morning interview, John stormed out of his room, entered the sleep lab opposite his, occupied by Samuel, and attacked him. He almost succeeded in killing the subject before 3 orderlies managed to administer a sedative. All the while he screamed about demons. It was this homicidal episode that distracted us from the fact that John was the last sane test subject left. Huh? What do you mean last sane one? Samuel sounded more sane, from the way they described him here, than John here. Okay. It was this homicidal episode that distracted us from the fact that John was the last sane test subject left. In retrospect, the fact that Samuel had been severely injured, yet still managed to walk and talk without seeming to experience pain, should have tipped us off that something was different about him. But we were too shocked from the attack to notice. I think this might be a miswrite. I think this might have been that he meant to say that Samuel was the last sane one. Because if John attacks someone randomly and tries to kill them, I wouldn't say that they are the one sane one of the group. Because what was with Samuel? Samuel lied. He felt great. His vitals were fine. Yeah, this is definitely a miswrite. It's not a miswrite. What? How is it not a miswrite about John? Well, okay, I guess not, maybe. It's kind of weird then to describe him as the last sane test subject. I personally interviewed the catatonic soldier who was administered stimulants in order to pull him out of his daze. Most of what he was saying sounded like mad rambling. Half his sentences were incoherent strings of words, like a shattered mind that was trying to put itself back together. He still doesn't sound sane. Those things that did make sense, at least grammatically, were about his fellow test subjects, and how he'd seen all of them die in his dreams. When I inquired as to what had killed them, he shook in fear for at least a minute before revealing that they had been eaten, clarifying that this was not actually what he had experienced, just the closest he could get to describing the actual thing. He claimed that deep sleep was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, and that he would rather die than ever go back to sleep again. If he ever went back, they would surely manage to eat him like they had the others. Despite his psychological profile ascribing a particular strength of will to the subject, he was one of the worst cases of mental trauma I had ever seen. Alrighty. Once again, it's like scientific research in the same way as, what's his face? The one that I just read. Not the language, but the one before it. Yamantau. It's very, it's giving me Yamantau vibes. When I asked if anyone else had not been eaten, he said that the only other subject who'd been able to escape from them had been John. I asked him why he thought that John would attack the other test subject, but he became too terrified to answer. I decided to wait a few hours and return to him when he was better rested. I would never be able to talk to him again. Once again this thing. Like, going to the future. Oh, like, pointing to what's going to happen in the future like this. The recovered test subjects spent their day crowing around Samuel, talking. Any divisions that the subjects may have had previously seemed erased. During the interviews, they all confirmed Samuel's first experience. Vague memories of a place of untold wonders, but also chasms deep with fear. It was eerie to see the exact same words repeated on every report sheet, and I decided that we should perform new batteries of tests with subject groups that could not communicate with each other. This is giving me a lot of like the whole sentence, like a place of untold wonders but also chasms deep with fear. That is like a poetic almost like a poetic explanation of the like concept of like sublimity or something. Vibes that I'm getting from it, at least. See, I'm putting my course to use, using words like sublimity. Haha. Useful courses, finally. Precisely at noon, they sprang into action. There was no talk about a plan that anyone overheard, yet the test subjects were coordinated. 2 of them went to kill our catatonic subjects, another 2 did the same with John, while the remaining 4, including Samuel, simply broke out of the institution. They just walked off base with no one stopping them. It wasn't a closed mental facility, it was merely a military lab. It didn't take us long to notice that 2 of our test subjects were being murdered. Unfortunately, we were not able to stop their deaths, even with military security personnel. The killers fought without regard for their own survival, focused solely on the success of the mission. Only one of them survived, remaining relatively uninjured as he broke the sedated John's neck. Upon interrogation, he seemed happy with what he had done, smiling more like the character of a psycho killer than a real human being. He said he'd be returning home soon to report on the situations. When he went to sleep that night, the subjects fell into a coma. It was a perfect 1 on the Glasgow scale. What in the hell is the Glasgow scale? The Glasgow Coma Scale. Clinical scale used to reliably measure a person's level of consciousness after a brain injury. So Glasgow Coma Scale would mean that your eyes are not opening, you don't give any verbal responses, and you have no motor responses. That would be a severe scale of Glasgow Coma. Well, actually, if I read it correctly, actually Glasgow Coma Scale's lowest score is 3, because you can get a 1 of 3 different things, so actually it couldn't be a perfect 1, because the perfect 3 would be the lowest. Actually. I don't know if that's true, that is just what I learned from like 5 seconds of reading, so I might be completely wrong about that. It's kind of difficult to unsee the contents of that course now when reading horror. Yeah, that's true. It has made reading horror more interesting to me though. I don't think it's ruined like the experience of horror at all. Let's finish the story. EEG showed no activity beyond basal functioning. Or basal? As though any trace of a person that had been there was gone. To this day he has not awoken. A manhunt was organized with involvement from the highest law enforcement and intelligence authorities. They found no trace of Samuel and the other 3 escaped subjects. They had become completely invisible. We were left with no funding, a lot of questions and not many answers. Something had taken over those soldiers, deleted their original selves, and considering the only thing our drug did was to enable memories of deep sleep, not generate dreams in deep sleep, one must wonder if that isn't a regular occurrence. Do we get eaten by them every night? Is the only reason they are never able to enter our world because they are made of memories? Is our inability to remember the dreams we experience during deep sleep an evolutionary adaptation? Someone with a high security clearance might be doing that kind of research at some top secret location, but it is not me, and it is not my old team. All I know is that right now there are at least 4 highly trained killers from some other world on the loose, and we cannot even begin to fathom their agenda. I fucking called that it was going to be an evolutionary adaptation of humans to not remember memories of deep sleep. I fucking got it. I fucking did it. My brain full of goo and stuff managed to get into that. Yes, absolutely. Hell yeah. This was a lot of fun. It was a very it was kind of like a combo of a Yamantau and the evolutionary reason, or the evolutionary purpose of what was it called? What was the reason or purpose? The evolutionary reason for the Uncanny Valley. It was kind of like a mixture of those two stories. It's like yeah. Actually, now that I mentioned earlier about the Russian sleep experiment, it actually feels like a mixture of 3 stories, like kind of all the 3 stories that we read before this one. Just because of the behavior of the people in oh wait, not the language. Sorry, sorry. Just the 3, like in 3 ways, it feels similar to the first 2 stories I meant, like from the sleep aspect, or like people behaving wildly, the research of or like a research station aspect, and the evolution subject. That's what I meant. I think this was my first story from Burger. It's a nice story. Yeah, not bad at all. It was very it was very similar to the older stories as well. And the fact that he uses a lot of like military stuff clearly shows like interest in old stories like that. Like I'm like certain that a guy like Gwydion, guy like a TheBurgerkrieg, who is Betty, has read on like different research that has happened in like Second World War times. That's Unit 73. What is it called? The Japanese units? Is it 731? Something like that? It's not 731. It's something like that. Unit something. It's called. This feels like a Doctor Who story or a premise for one. Yeah, it really did. Yeah, it kind of gave me vibes of like, if you remember the Doctor Who story Midnight. The weird thing outside. The weird thing outside talking about that there is a planet that nothing should be able to live there, but it gets somehow inside the ship, and then they start repeating words and all that jazz. It kind of gave me those vibes. Oh yeah, he has a video on that. I fucking knew he. Of course he did. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because this definitely feel like things that have taken a lot of inspiration from real world events. Yeah, this was great. This was great. Sorry, I don't know if I have as many comments to say about this story as the last ones, just because I felt like it has similarities with the earlier ones and I don't want to repeat myself too much, but yeah. Maybe the one, it is interesting, like, the way he described it as a confession to priests and stuff like that. At the beginning. This is not the direction I thought the story was going to take. Also in Ireland. I don't know if that matters in the story that much, but it's once again one of those things where I would be very interested in knowing what was the inspiration behind the story. But yeah, it's been lovely. It's been very, very lovely. The description of demons in that way as well. The way they said like they're pretty much like demons that are in the dreams. It would be it's like I'm trying to think like if that is like in a similar way that he said they had been eaten, and that they were not actually eaten, but that is the closest description. I'm also thinking, like, is demons the closest description that the man would get? Or is that like that demons that humanity knows have come from dreams originally? I see the I can see the I'm so tired. I'm so sorry. I can see the pattern in Gwydion's stories. That they leave more answers than they answer. it's definitely like an intentional thing that he's doing in the stories. Every single story leaves a lot of questions to be answered, and I'm glad that he's not necessarily... It doesn't... From what I've seen, he doesn't tend to get back to his old stories in a way. He might get back to old themes, but not the same stories. Sometimes a big issue I have with... especially longer horror stories online, is that people can't let the story go, and then that can lead to really, really, really bad final parts, or like stories that are continued even though there was nothing left to continue, or that the questions didn't have to be answered. That is also a big issue I have with some like TV shows. Like you don't have to lead us the whole way. You can leave us at the end of the story, even if you haven't like told everything we could know about the world. Having questions is, especially in horror, having questions is way more important than having answers. These are just his horror stories. The short story collection has all sorts of stories, so we can't comment on his style in general. That is true, yeah, of course. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. This was a very interesting read here. They were very different from the horror stories that I've read before. In the future, I'm gonna read more. I don't think I'm gonna, by the way, get a game today. I'm getting very, very tired right now. But yeah, I really enjoyed these stories. The language may be the least of all. Most of all, I think I might have enjoyed the first one. The Evolutionary Reason for the Uncanny Valley. That was just such a perfect fucking little story. I really enjoyed that one. But yeah, thanks. Next time I think I'll be reading... That's not very disco. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I had energy to be disco, but that fucking game, Disco Elysium, that game you need to have like full brain to play that thing. The long dialogue with the lady, that destroyed me last time. I was so tired when I was going through that. I got maybe like 40% of that information. But next time, what story am I reading next time? I think my next story that I'll be reading is by Manen Lyset, however you pronounce her name. It's a shorter story, so I might read another story as well during that stream, or maybe just have a shorter reading stream. But there is a story that she's written called I Wasn't Alone Seeking Shelter from the Blizzard, which has been a very interesting story. But yeah, she recently gave me permission to read the story, so that one is very interesting to me. It sounds very old school creepypasta or old school no sleep story. So I'll be very interested in seeing how that's gonna be like. I also have like 2 or 3 other ones lined up. One of the ones that I'm very, 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 very excited to read is by a guy called Sarcassonomicon, with his story, My Daughter Wants to Eat a Woman Who Shared Her Birthday. That thing, I heard a very slight moments from the beginning of the story, and I've fallen in love with it, and I really want to read it as soon as possible. Anyways, thanks for the stream. This was a lot of fun. Unfortunate that it's a shorter one this time, but I don't have energy every time to have a long one. Next time I might also have a gaming stream. I think I'm gonna stream next week. Another stream, not just Nachorror stuff. Maybe a Disco Elysium stream. Sure. Anyways, thanks for the stream. A lot of fun. See you on the next stream of me gamings. Or the next stream of next weekend, most likely. Maybe not next weekend, actually, I'm very busy that weekend. But as soon as possible, there will be another episode of Nachorror. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Bye-bye. See you next time. Mwah.